Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Thank you for tuning in to my conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. Today, I am privileged and really excited to speak with my next guest, an actor, speaker, playwright, TV writer who draws from her own experiences to tell stories about resilience and amplify marginalized voices. My guest is passionate about the transformative power of theater, and she finds joy in inspiring future generations through her work with youth. Please welcome Tanya Everett. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been a wonderful journey just to get to here. So I'm excited to be in space with you.
Likewise, it's just great, and it's one of those things that I'm rarely afforded to peel back the curtain a little bit before we get into like the introduction. It's rare that I talk to a person, have a really engaging conversation before the interview. It's like we become friends after the interview. Usually my interviews are like blind dates.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. No, not this one. We were like, we should continue this conversation. It's going well, right? Like, let's make this a thing. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that happens to me a lot. I think I have one of those faces where people tell me their whole life story. I don't know if the light skin thing or what it is, but
It's so disarming.
It's so disturbing. You're so personable, So yeah, no, I really appreciated that, and just like who you were and how engaged you were, and it was easy. So yeah, it was great.
And we're here and doing it in this format, so this is going to be really, really cool. And as I like to start off, because and I was sharing a bit about this earlier before we got started. I think inevitably I get those bios, those artist statements, all of those things. Sometimes they're out of date. Sometimes they're not the most accurate. So the way for me to curb that, keep myself on point, a little CYA, if you will, is to invite the guest, you in this instance, to tell us a bit about yourself, introduce yourself, tell us a bit about yourself. And I have a second bullet point, but I at least want to start there.
Okay, yeah. So, well, I'm a writer, actor, storyteller, sort of multi-hyphenate in that way. I'm also a speaker. I just recently did a TEDx on grief. I'm in the process of writing a memoir about grief, and I'm a playwright, and I've written for television. I've written a couple of movies. So I wear a lot of different hats. I'm also an educator. I worked at Brooklyn College where I got my MFA. And I believe that education is a part of my ministry. It's part of, who I am. So even through my art, I want to be finding ways to heal and teach and communicate in that way. I'm an auntie. I'm legitimately an auntie at this point, and a cat mom. My cat may come through at some point. And I travel a lot, actually, as a thing that I feel like is not in my bio. Is I try to travel a good amount, and I think this summer I plan to go to St. John at least, but I'm hoping to also get to the UK again. So yeah.
That's Aquarius. We have that wanderlust. It's like, look, I gotta make moves. I gotta see the world.
Yeah, I don't understand how you can have a no shade. The American economy is really bad, but if you have the American passport, you got the platinum of passports. You better use it. That's all I'm saying.
100%. So I'm going to ask this sort of question, and in this the second bullet point, if you will, it's still kind of thinking a bit back, and I use the term strangeness. I have it. I'm a person that talks a lot. I'm always looking to get to the root of things. Do you embrace how would you define your quote unquote strangeness? Those unique traits that make you that make you like able to be that multi-hyphenate, to have that interest to be that multi-hyphenate? How do you embrace it?
I love that. I really love that question. And I honestly wasn't quite sure how to answer it. But my first thought theater is it's actually the thing that is the most important part of my art, right? Is the weirdness, is the quirkiness, is the I was working on a self-tape today, and one of the things, I coach a lot. My coach was like, there's just this weird, lovely quality that you have when you're not worried about what people think about you, or notice that you're worried about people thinking about you, right? And embracing that. I have a unique view of the world. My TED talk was important to look at how I viewed grief through humor, right? And that there was a sense of like weirdness to that. And I think when people hear grief, they're like, please don't make me do that. That sounds awful. And I'm like, no, what if we could laugh at ourselves? What if we can be in a lighter space with it, even though it's heavy? So I think that it's something that I continue to mine for. Like, what's my version of this? And can I embrace it? Can I really lean in to that?
That's good. And watching that, we're definitely going to talk more about the TEDx, more about the TED Talk, because I had feelings. So we'll dive into it. We'll dive it. This black heart that's made out of concrete had feelings. So they say we don't really have those emotions, feelings.
Onions, a little onion situation happening.
It was a couple thug tears. I was like, all right. So I remember like maybe 2 years ago, I did this interview with, a person with the theater background and it's music and all of the stuff. And she identified something for me that I've carried with me since about those sort of early moments. And I was joking about being terrified of the stage. I was 6'4", I can't hide. I'm like, can I get behind a tree or something? What can we do? And she was like, I feel like you did something creative early on that you're probably overlooking. And I was like, I wasn't masters of ceremony. It's like a 5-year-old. And I have no, I'm thinking of that now, sweating a little bit like, oh, no. But it happened. And, in looking back on that, just trying to tap back into that experience so many years ago, there's something from it that I can apply to it. And maybe this was like predestined or preordained in some ways. And because it was so early. So when you think back of sort of your arc, your life, is there an early creative moment or period where you're like, yeah, that was one of those early things. I still look back at it and you see it. Is there something in yours?
Definitely. I was 4 or 5, I think, and there was a school play. And I remember what I was wearing. I was in like a little blue skirt thing and matching bows and all the things because I was a little doll. And we were supposed to do the performance, like, you're bouncing on your knees, this kind of thing. And for some reason, I didn't want to do it. And I crossed my arms and I stood in front and I crossed my arms and people laughed. And they laughed. And I was like, if I do more of this, they'll laugh more. And I remember being like, what is this power? Like, what is happening right now? I'm a baby, right? Like a child. But that was one of my first memories of loving the stage and loving the connection to an audience like that. And then my second memory is, so I did children's theater in my hometown, Quincy, Massachusetts. I feel weird repping Massachusetts, but
Let's pop there a little bit.
it's what it is, where I'm originally from. I call myself a New Yorker by way of Mass, because I've been in New York for most of my adult life. But I was in this children's theater play, and I was playing Pocahontas because inappropriate. But there, I went up. The term is I went up. So I lost my lines, and this little boy who is more experienced actor than me, he improv'd to get us back to the scene. And I remember, again, lights in my eyes. Imagine this like little like schoolhouse theater kind of thing, but he got us back on track. And I was like, that is another version of magic. Like the idea that we could make a mistake in public, but fix it and still somehow come out, was just this most exhilarating feeling. So yeah, both of those experiences stick in my head. Yeah.
That's great. I think I may have sent you one of the last time I was actually in front of a large audience of people, a large group of people, and I I had so many nerves because I was gonna lose all of my. I was like, I got this thing planned. It's gonna go great, and trying to think through it and then try to actualize and all of that. And usually it doesn't work out for me. Usually I fumble the rock at the 1 yard line, and it's like, didn't score that touchdown, Rob. Kind of botched it a little bit, but I'm good enough that I can hide it. I can compartmentalize my damn it to really get across something. And it was a thing that, I learned from a friend. It's like, I don't know what you're doing. They don't know what the thing. Now, granted, if someone's seen the play before, and if it's a play I'm in or something like that, that's different. It's like, yo, those are not the lines at all.
Yeah.
But when you're able to get back in it and you show that sort of confidence, that creative confidence, what have you, because getting on the stage and doing anything, it's a thing. It can be scary, it can be frightening, all of that stuff. So being able to have that, I guess, with courage under fire, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I feel is part of it is life is that, right? Life is, and I think a lot of theater experiences or live performance of any kind, music, dance, you can't do it over again. There are no do-overs. So, you get on the subway and you think you're going to go, I don't know if you're here in New York sometimes. So you get on the F and the F decides that it's going to go local or it's going to go past your stop. And then you have to pivot and figure out how to get, and I feel like that's kind of life, right? Like you don't really know where your train's gonna go. You just have to adapt to the, to the river, to the current. And I think there's a lot of really useful information that people, and especially young people, can get by being in live performance, even if they're never going to be a performer.
So two things. I think that it's a good comment. It's good that you mentioned the train. One, I call it riding the wave, Aquarius. Two. So the last time I was in New York about last year, or maybe it was last year, and I just Ubered everywhere because I was like, I refuse to train.
You went on the Ubers?
I did.
How'd that go? Tell me about that.
I was good. But
up and down Manhattan,
to Brooklyn at one point. I was out here bugging.
To Brooklyn, yes, but when you in Manhattan, it takes more time. I feel like usually.
So this year, I wanted the challenge, right? So I got on the train, and because I had a panic attack, I was just like, "This is not good," because I got off at the wrong stop. I was like, Bushwick, Flatbush, those are the same place. Like, no, they're not. So I was really out of sorts. So this year going up there, I was like, I'm going to conquer this. And of course I was on the F train. So when you mentioned that, I started like, yes.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I saw that what you were talking about. I was like, man, did I miss my stop? Am I going in the wrong direction?
Yeah. It's not intuitive entirely, but it is a really good system because I've been in LA for a couple of years. And LA's system it's not meant for human consumption, right? It's very, very challenging. It makes more sense for you to Uber there because things are so spread out. But New York is like, once you get the rhythm of it, it's very functional, right? It's functional to the point of and the best that America has. You go other places and you're like, oh, we have to dumb it down. It is what it is.
That's the feeling I had when I did it. I felt like I conquered something, and I was like, man, I'm gonna go over there to Harlem now. I was talking wild. And
no, but you'll go there and you'll be like, oh, why is it so much easier? Like that's the challenge. It's like, why does it actually function much better? Like each set of subway, in Paris or London, when you go one side or the other side, you know exactly where it's going because they have a list of the stops. You don't have to find the map and crawl over a homeless person and punch a baby. You don't have to do any of that. It's just there. It's just there for you. It's so Yeah. But I'm proud of you. And now you can do it. Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah, I felt accomplished. I got my culture this past go around.
That's it. Did your friends make fun of you for using the Ubers?
Uh, Last year, yes, my curator friend, she's Dominican. She was like, "Poppy, what are you doing?" I was just like, I don't know what to do with that.
No one uses Uber unless it's raining. Like that's not a thing. That's what I like about being back. I went in the city. Well, I went into Brooklyn today, and I was like, "This is so easy."
Mhm.
Like it's so nice that it's easy. Baltimore doesn't have a subway like that. I don't really know.
It's not as complex. It's kind of like what is it, east to west. That's kind of
Yeah.
that. And we have like the light rail north to south. So
Okay.
I like DC's a bit better than what we have here in Baltimore.
Yes.
And I got to do DC's next. But yeah, as I conquer these different mass transit mechanisms. Um,
Magic.
so going back into it, because I'm sure people are like, why are you talking about trains? It's like, look, man, you see actors.
Metaphor, though.
So in moving along
Yes.
in your career, right? You in these different experiences that you had multi-hyphenate, right?
Mhm.
Um, so what is a lesson or an experience that comes to mind that you really gained from one of those like early like opportunities, whether it be from a writing perspective, whether it be because I think I've read movement as a part of your background, dance as well. So any of those like early experiences in any of the multi-hyphenate areas, right? That
Mm,
you carry on, and you're like, yeah, I can look back on that, because you had the really young, like you're a baby, really young experience, but one of the more like a little bit later, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna
yeah.
write this, or I'm gonna take from here. What comes to mind for you?
So the first thing that came up is the collaboration. I've been a teaching artist and an educator, and I really believe that art has this intense collaboration that's required, and as a professional artist, right, as somebody that's worked, in different areas, produced my own work, and also, worked on sets and worked in theater. And each of these require sometimes, 40, 50 movie sets, hundreds of people. The collaboration, being able to be a functional member of a web,
Mm,
but also over the years to learn how to lead in those spaces and to learn how to lead in a way that's an intentional and kind. I think that our industry is going through this really big upheaval because we never really thought about the people, the personnel behind it, right? It was this giant
mhm.
cash money maker. And now it's like, wait, but there are human beings behind that. And nonprofits and a lot of these other sectors are thinking about it because it's a part of their model of sorts, right? They think about people. Whereas my industry, that can be like the after the fact. We have to service their bodily needs,
Yeah.
or we should think about how Black women's hair is done on set, Um, so I think that my early lessons were being a collaborator, learning how to be, in a team, on a dance team, learning how to feed off of each other, listening and responding, really being present with people. Like all of those things are are integral to art, and I think we forget about them as soon as like a paycheck comes or the stress of something happens. And I really go back to that early sense of like, can I be an important and vital part of this, even if I have a small part?
Yeah.
Like there are no small parts, there are only small egos. Uh, so yeah, I think the collaboration is really, really key. And it's the thing that I love, like, writer's room or being in a play. Rehearsal room is my favorite place in the world. I don't know if everyone loves that, but being in a rehearsal room is where the magic happens,
Yeah.
right? no one knows what's going to happen when an audience comes, but the rehearsal room is where you try stuff and you can fail and invent things and throw things out and rip it all to shreds. And I just love the rehearsal room so much. Yeah, long-winded answer.
No, no, no. Look, when I get the long-winded answers, you creative types, like I gave you too much. It's like, no, no, you gave me just enough because I can start crossing out questions. I'm like, you're making my job easy. Um,
Yeah.
sound bites. I think one of the other things I'm curious about, as we're going riding away through the questions. Um, so is there a character, like, from whether on a project you've worked on? Actually, let me step back. I want to step back real quick. Um, Collaboration. I definitely want to talk about that a little bit because I want to touch on that just from this perspective. This in itself, right, is a collaborative thing. Um,
Mm, yes.
and not everybody kind of understands it, in that way. I pitch it as, hey, I got this. I'm just trying to make sure I'm prepared. I have my questions. And I've seen some weird interviews online recently where people are not prepared and don't know about the guest. So I try not to do that. And
Yeah.
I try to be prepared, and really I want to have the person on because I'm interested in their work. On the
Yeah.
flip side of it, because it's collaborative by nature, it's a sort of give and take there. So if the person has like weird energy, they got different things going on, then it's going to fall flat. Like regardless of how much energy or questions that I put out there to try to like, here's the, the thing for you to reach for, here's the carrot, if you will. And like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah.
for sort of a crappy conversation and a crappy sort of collaborative, because communication is that, conversation is that,
Yeah.
it's only as good as the people in it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the most important part of it is knowing who your collaborators are. I think that uh, a big thing in theater and TV and film, why casting is so hard. And shout out to my friend Destiny Lilly. She'll be very happy that I shout her out. She is a casting director at Telsey, and she cast the Color Purple recently, and she has been nominated for an Emmy for Only Murders in the Building. She took me to the Emmys this year. And so, the casting, she's also the president of the Casting Association. She's a big deal. She's a big deal. But she's my friend.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring her up is casting, I think, is an unsung art.
Mhm.
And that is where the collaboration really clearly clicks, is if you get the right actors and the right director and the right, set designers. And a friend of mine is in lighting design at NYU, and all of those, shout out to Lauren. And I love the idea that each of those pieces are part of a giant puzzle that you as a consumer will come see, and all you'll see is, the actors, right?
Yeah.
And there's something about having produced and having done things behind the scenes more, being a writer, that gives me a lot of permission and a lot of freedom in terms of performance and storytelling, because I know that the casting part is just not about me per se, even though it is me as a person who may or may not be getting the job. I'm just one of like so many humans on a giant call sheet of sorts. And I think the times where those people have come together and been in synchronicity, it's like this ballet. It's a real dance. It's really, I think that's why we all do it, actually, is it's not necessarily the finished product, but it's coming together and knowing we're completing something. It's the group project at school. It's the science project at school but it's like, that's your life.
Yeah.
Right? And then, a lot of people didn't like the science project at school, and they were like, screw that. Like, helium isn't interesting to me. And they wanted to do their own thing. And that's how you become like an author, and you write novels because you don't actually have to interact with people very often. Or an editor, right? Like a lot of times they're in their sort of silos. But those of us that loved the group project, that loved being in community with each other, that loved throwing ideas out and trying to figure it out with people, I think those are the artist types, you know.
That works in this way. When I think about the behind the scenes stuff in that group project setup, I was always the tech guy, the producer type, always the guy like, no, this is how it's gonna work. Yeah, you're pretty, you're tall and handsome. Yeah, you go do that. I'm gonna be back here and I'm gonna make sure all of this works.
And we needed you. We totally needed you because like there wouldn't function otherwise. And we need a timekeeper. You know, we need the different kinds of people. I think it's Blink, Malcolm Gladwell. I'm maybe botching this, but there are different, there are connectors, and I was always the connector. I was always like, you two need to know each other. And I think that you as a tech person would be really helpful in this. And can you do this? So I knowing your strengths and also knowing your weaknesses and knowing how to let other people, this is where I think people fail at collaboration, is like knowing how to let other people lead with what they are good at. Yeah. And empowering them to be good at what they are good at and not stepping on the toes of them saying, oh, I can do it better when you clearly cannot. Because no one is good at everything. I mean, unless you're a prince, rest in peace.
It's good. When I do this running bit, and we will talk about it more off mic, but I at least want to share this before I move to the next question.
Okay.
When I look at, I pay attention to credits, especially the pre-film credits, whatever. And I'm like, oh, written, directed, starring, score. I'm like, wow, you're good at everything. I do that in my head, and I'm like, this is going to be a great flick. No issues with this one.
He's like, what is happening? And again, a couple people, right? Jordan Peele does a lot of stuff. Sure. He's super good at it, right? I have a ton of friends that are multi-hyphenates, but a lot of times they're not multi-hyphenates on the same project. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's another part of it. It's like, can you be a writer, actor, director, cinematographer or gaffer, what have you? A lot of times in the indie world, you have to do a lot of that stuff. But if you could choose, would you do it all? Right.
Right.
So
that's why I have a small fledgling team on this podcast production.
Yeah, that's it. You got to do it. You have to have your team. You need your team. The team, you're also only as good, I think, as your team is. You know? So.
I agree. So I got two more questions before we start talking about, the TED Talk a bit. So I want to get your sense on whether it's hear about an experience, whether it's, being an actor, whether it's a character you've acted as, or a character you've written, or just character you've collaborated on, like developing. Was there one that deeply resonated with you on an emotional level?
There have been several for sure. I will talk about two. So years ago, I did this play. It has a funny title, but it's not a funny title. And I'll say why in a minute. So it's called Munched. It is not what you think it is. It is not a porn. It was
spices here.
Munchausen syndrome. So if you ever saw The Sixth Sense, for those of you that are watching, it's that there's a scene, or there's part of the movie where his mother makes him sick. She feeds him poison. So I played a woman whose mother was incarcerated for most of her life, wrongly. And she was wrongly accused of having Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is not Munchausen syndrome is making yourself sick. Munchausen by proxy is making someone else sick. And my mother, rest in peace, was incarcerated when I was little. So I found playing a woman who lost their mother to the system very impactful and very cathartic, actually. It was an opportunity for me to I mean, my mom got out, and so I had a relationship with her. Um, but she had a very difficult relationship with the law. And, and so I had a lot of empathy for this character. And I also found that her stoicism and cynicism was such a protective measure against this woman that she didn't have a relationship with. And so there was a part of me that was super grateful that I had a relationship with my mother, albeit whatever it was. And also, I think that was the beginning of a journey to forgiving her, for really understanding that I could never have walked in her shoes. I could never, I am like the furthest thing from someone who could like live through being imprisoned, right? Like I went to Ivies and I go to Spain and Greece and Poland and like, my life from my mother's is as far different as you could possibly imagine. And I think that playing that character made me really ask, like, what do I even know about her? Like, what could I even possibly know about the 20 plus years that she had before she had me and the life that she's leading right now at that time? And it was a real, like, Mother's Day's coming up, right? And the idea that I thought about having a daughter's day because I feel like we never celebrate the idea that women aren't all mothers, but we are all daughters. And it kind of clicked to me, like, what are the experiences of trying to get to know your mother and to really understand that she was a woman who was also a daughter and also all these other things before she was your mother. Right. Before she had this title that was supposed to make her into whatever Donna Reed, Felicia Rashad character that you had put her in. And since I didn't have that mom anyway, I was like, well, so yeah, that was a really good one. Any questions about that? Because I have one more. But
no, that was
it was good. It was good. It was good.
Good. Enthralled.
Oh, good. Yeah. I was like 10, 12 years ago now. So before she passed away in 2015. And it was definitely, that was the one. I don't know, something about you're losing your mother. You still have your mom?
Yes.
I'm so happy for you. Happy Mother's Day to your mom. Yeah, it's something about losing your mother is like really disorienting. And I think losing your father, I lost my father when I was 10. So I don't have like the relationship, one of my very good friends lost his father recently. And, he's an adult. So I don't know what that is like per se. I had a father figure that was very, very close to me. So I have the concept, but like, I was a kid when my dad died. But so when my mom left, I was like, oh, I am untethered. Like this is the connection, the like umbilical cord that you have to like, it's sci-fi really, right? Like she actually made you inside her body. Like, there were just certain things that I'll never, there's questions that I really want to put in my memoir for people to ask their parents, right? Because I'm like, you do not get another opportunity. And once it's gone, like you want to be like, so what's up with our medical history? Or, like real stuff. Like, why did you make this choice at 10, 20, 30? Why did you make those choices at those pivotal moments as a blueprint, So then the one that just came up today was I'm working on a project, auditioning for a project, and I've been really interested in aging, actually, and the idea of aging as I turned 40. I know, looking like a goddess.
100%.
These grays don't lie though. So I was working on an audition today that is about a woman who travel. We see her travel from 7 to 107,
Mm.
and I watched a documentary that I'm just plugging away right now. It's called Life in the Blue Zones,
Oh
Live to
yeah,
a
yeah.
Hundred, right? And it just is, I wept after reading the play. I'm such an actor. I wept after reading the play. I know, I heard it. I zoomed out of my body for a second and then I watched me say wept and a play in the same sentence. And I was like,
That's
that
good.
yeah, that's real life. That's real life. But it was so extraordinary, and it so made me wonder about this pursuit that we have to capitalism and to making things. And one of the things that she wants at 18 is to have a big life. Right, like a life that is going to be encompassing of all the magical things that 20-year-olds want,
Mhm.
and she gets swept up in making a family. And, I feel like we're in this really interesting juxtaposition. I'm curious about how you feel about this, where it's like you either are on the career path or in a way that feels different than other times in history. You're either, because the economy, right?
Mhm.
Like you're either on this path to like make a lot of money and be famous, the Oprahs of the world, or you're having a family. Like, and people are doing both. I'm not saying that they're not, but our generation is asking that question. What are the sacrifices to have it all?
Right.
And I think our generation is starting to say, we can't afford it. Like, we
I
can't.
I agree, and it aligns with the wanderlust thing I mentioned earlier. Like, I want to be able to just drop and do, not drop and give me 50, but drop and do whatever I need at a particular time. And, the nomad thing is alluring, the sort of, hey, I go out, I travel, I have a crew or what have you, that I meet in these different cities and I'm doing these interviews, taking sort of this podcast on the road, and this being sort of my very independent lane. And if I were to dive into the sort of family and that thing,
Yeah.
I would be a bit older, but also creeping up on 40. Like I'm like sneaking up on 40.
Mhm.
And, I don't know what that looks like. It's almost like, leaving the current setup to chase one's dreams, if you will.
Mhm.
But I don't think that aligns with the family setup. And yeah, that's kind of where it's at. I just think like the finances aren't there, and sort of sacrificing what one wants. That's a that's a hell of a choice.
Yeah. And so that's, what was so interesting about this particular piece and what sort of resonated with me is that Life in the Blue Zones doesn't necessarily ask you to make the decision, but it does ask you to investigate community, right? It asks you, like, who are your people? And, those of us that are living these solo nomadic lifestyles, it's like you get to an age where you're like, who's going to take care of me? Because
Yeah.
so it's like is it chosen family? It's something that I preach a lot because I lost my family is really investigating chosen family and really investigating who are your people, and that is like very specific. Like if people hear nothing else from this interview, like who are your people and do they have the passwords to your information? Do they have an extra set of keys? Like what are you investigating as a reciprocal relationship that can help you through all of life's things, right? And the things that the documentary and even this play brought about was that at the end of your life, it's moments of like sheer connection. Right. And connection could absolutely be the people that you meet on your travels. That's another way of connecting. But it's investigating that. It's investigating who and what are you pouring into?
In,
You
in,
know?
in a moment of extreme uncomfortability and transparency,
Mm.
and when I do this, I'm leading with friendship, with the attempt at that. It's not being thirsty for friendship because I can just turn the lights off in here and just watch anime all day. But the approach is to connect with folks, and you think it goes one way. You think you're like, oh, extended. Oh, we like mine. We have like similar energy, similar things, similar interests. And then other times it's just like you think it's that, but it's more of like this was a show and it's really not that. And
Yeah.
there is, and I've heard this from, pretty prominent dude in DC. We were talking about it a bit and we had a little conversation off mic. And he had mentioned, he's like, oh, down here, super fake. He's like, don't fall for it. He's like, it's political. And I see that in certain pockets.
Mhm.
And I'm like, all right, making on me, not to be wounded, wounded, but not to be wounded in that way of like, oh, I extended friendship and it was put onto the friendship, onto building that community and that connection.
Sure.
And, I learned that, and because I'm coming out of it, that's why I'm mentioning it. I had this period where for about 6 to 8 months, I was a recluse. I was not around the community. No one
Oh,
had seen me. And I just was doing a lot of heavy like weightlifting, all of this. I dropped like a bunch of weight. And people were like, oh my God, hey, it's like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, I really don't like being out here. So trying to figure out like, is it the
mm,
social thing or is it finding your people? And I've been able to, in that time, figure out who are my people and invest time and pour energy into those relationships and be open and building more, but a bit more reticent and reserved.
yeah. And I think you stumbled upon something real. It's like it's not just being out and being out, right? It's not just being out and being, it's being with the folk, it's being with your tribe, it's being with the people that are nourishing to you. And within what we do and how we do it, it can be really hard to find the authenticity of that. What does it mean to actually find somebody who cares about you and who has the ability to pour into a relationship, right? Because those things aren't always the same.
Right.
But I really have a mission and a real, like, I don't like the word mission, but
Oh,
intention.
yeah.
Yeah, because missions. Woof. I have an intention to try and spread that idea. Pick your poison. Girlfriends, living single, friends. They all were shows that reminded us that our family and our friends can be our family.
Yeah.
And that's the log line of Friends, is actually that point in your life where your friends are your family.
Yeah.
And my sort of like pushback to that is, what if your friends were always your family? Right. Because we all grew up with like play aunties and what have you. And that's, my friends' kids consider me their aunt. And yet we didn't codify that. We
Yeah.
didn't say, oh, they're a part, like, oh, that's your aunt. That's your uncle, them. But codifying it and saying they belong and that we belong in relation to each other and that we're going to take care of each other. And I think that Americans really struggle with like blood ties versus chosen ties. And I don't know if I think culturally that feels very American with the two-person household and the blood family, et cetera. And I've found that a lot more comfort and community with being intentional with all of my relationships,
Yeah.
including my biological family members, and being like, what have we signed up for?
Right.
What are we doing here?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something to, I think that more people should be pondering and thinking through and considering, because the way that things work somehow it's just like, yeah, we're working with it, but it doesn't mean that it works.
That's
The way
it.
that we're going about it. And
I'm doing it,
yeah.
but
And as I said, like I'm not a drastic dude, but I'll do like, let me remove myself from this and let me ponder on, let me chew on this for a little bit and then come back to it with a different sort of perspective. And, and I'll say this last thing for moving to, because I want to definitely talk about TED Talk. I'll do this thing where it's just like, all right, I've chewed on this a bit. Now I kind of have a better context of it. And it's like, let me check on my people. Let me connect with my people. And in doing this, this is how I meet a lot of people, I suppose. Probably 2% of the people actually have my number that actually contact me directly. That's it's a rare gift, friendship, to quote Hannibal. So
I think we did the number thing already, didn't we?
we did.
I think we're already there.
Yo, Rob Lee here. We'll get back to the conversation in a moment, but I want to encourage you to leave us a quick review. 5 stars, whatever you think we deserve. 5 stars is always appreciated. And write a comment. Really let us know what you think. This is my podcast as much as it is the community's podcast. And yeah, have your voice heard. Share, dive back into the archives. We're approaching 800 episodes at this point. So definitely, let's keep rocking and rolling, but let us know what you think. Now back to the pod. So I want to talk a bit about the TED Talk. So you discussed learning the grief dance and the idea that the only way out is through. So could you, speak on like working on the talk, working on the performance? How was it perhaps different from other things that you've done in your multi-hyphenate career? I have a sense of how it is because it's very personal, but I want to at least like open the floor for you to discuss.
Yes. I mean, I couldn't have imagined how much work it was. That's the first thing I'll say is I think a lot of people, watch TEDs and they're like, oh, they're not very good or what have you. And they're hard. They're actually very, very hard. So it was tremendous amount of work. I had a coach, shout out to Andrew Weiss, and I also coached with my dance teacher, Minor, in LA, and my good friend Clinton, and another friend of mine, Eric, it'd be Anthony Clinton Lowe, and all of those humans were a part of the pre-work, right? The writing of the talk was tremendously personal, right? Like writing a personal essay, but writing a personal essay that you're going to perform, yeah. I think it's just a different, it's a different one thing to write an essay and knowing people will read it, right? And saying, but I will be somewhere else while they read it, right? So if I send it to you and you read my essay, I can be hiding in the bathroom and, not have to watch you in real time. And this particular experience, for those of you, if you haven't seen the talk yet, is about, some of the worst things that happened to me in my life, losing people in my life that were so close to me. And, I have some pictures up on my altar that I'm looking at right now where there are those people, all the people in the picture are gone. Or it's just me and my brother. And, I had 2 sets of I have parents. I had an adoptive set. So my grandmother and her partner raised me, and my mom and my dad also all have passed away. So, and then I had a stepfather and several other, grandparents and close friends. And so there was just a string of experiences where people were got cancer around the same time. And I was trying to keep it together, right, for so long and trying to navigate loss in a way that I think was really alienating to the people around me. And I need to ask more questions about that, but like it almost felt fictional how much loss I was experiencing because it was before the pandemic. I think in the pandemic, people started to get it because they started losing a lot of people and they were like, and the numbers were just, oh, I lost 10 members. I lost 15, but before that, the 2019 before that, people in my age category were not experiencing loss like that. And so they were just like, that's a lot, like that's a lot. And, we were in our 30s, right? We're supposed to be going out and procreating and having fun and doing stuff. And I'm going to funerals and paying for funerals and stuff. So it was the experience that I was trying to encapsulate into words and into performance was incredibly heavy for me. But I wanted to bring a lot of lightness to it, and the goal was, I kept trying to figure out how to bring dance and my experience of loss together. And so the thing that I did was that there was a metaphor for loss through dance, right? So the dance is used in the talk as a way to describe the stages of grief. So I think that the stages of grief are not linear, which the doctor that came up with those, the psychiatrist that came up with those, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, you can only say it slow because it's a very annoying name, bless you, came up with, the 5 to 7 stages of grief. And she didn't mean them to be linear either, right? That wasn't the intention, but they were taught that way, and we've sort of heard them that way. So, and we are a culture that likes to codify things. So 1 through 7, 1 through 5, and we're going to get to acceptance. And what I was finding was, 5, 10, 15 years later, I lost my dad when I was 10. So 30 years ago, I'm still affected by that. Father's Day is still hard. His birthday comes up, it's still hard. People will say things that they experience with their dad or girl dad or whatever, and I'm still triggered 30 years later. So there's something to be said about the stages of grief not being linear. Yeah. And I think that dance as both a metaphor, but also as a way of healing. That movement was a big part of my life, has always been a big part of my life. In the pandemic, I started boxing in the park across the street from me in Brooklyn. And, I think a lot of us there were people baking, there was people, boxing for me was like a way to really orient my brain and my body in a time where there felt like no clear path. Like we didn't know what was happening or what was going to happen, but I could box and I could punch something and I could watch my body change and really explore that. And I think about all of the times in my life where I've been moving intentionally have been better times, even if the things that were going around me were chaos. Organizing my physical body, because my physical body, actually the body keeps a score, right? So it's taking all this impact of the life stuff and it's holding it in my tissues and in my cells. And how do you let that out?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I've been around it. I'm in this spot where I'm the oldest of I have 2 half siblings. And they're older, and then I have a younger brother who's kind of like, yeah, I'd be chilling. So that's sort of the energy. So I'm the one that's looked at like, yo, you're the bearer of the name, you're the junior. So, and I'm the person that has the codes and knows the things, and the person that has to put on the stoic face. And it was an instance, maybe, everyone's around, everyone's still here, thankfully. And very, very fortunate for that. But there is these moments where I try to, be stoic about it and try to think of things in this sort of, everything is a bit to me. I try to make everything comedy. Those are the instances when I'm unable to really do that.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I need to be very business minded and business mindset. And the closest thing that I can relate to in recent years is probably 2018, when my uncle passed. And it was circumstances that didn't really make a lot of sense, and kind of seeing, my relatives get older and had to start asking those questions, and even thinking about sort of, I was in attack mindset of like, yeah, we need some answers to these questions, and I'm not getting them. So what are the levels of people I can talk to? I turned into a complete but that was the way. And, it's just like, I need answers. And I think, almost I'm a very anti-bully kind of guy, and I see the way that certain systems work. It's like the sort of lack of information and how things go. And this was like the pre-processing. So inevitably, my uncle had an allergic reaction to like shellfish, and he was in a home, and it was just like, all of this is being monitored. I was like, so I need some better understanding of this, and and ultimately just asking the questions, right? And I just remember when he'd passed, it really affected my dad, because that's his brother, that's his guy. And he'd asked me, and it's a thing that we do. And I'm not one of those. I don't really have like the biggest belief system, but it is a thing that we do. It's like, well, he's passed. Do you want to go in there and see him? It's like, no, I've seen him. I
Mm.
saw him yesterday. I saw him before he's passed. That's not him anymore. And that's the way I conceptualize that. And that's the way that I've kind of looked at that for years. And the sort of like off-putting nature of it, it's like, oh, that's not how we grieve. I'm like,
Mm.
well, that's how I am because I'm an individual. And each time I would imagine might be different depending on the person and depending on the circumstance. But I was like, in this moment, I was like, I'm going to remember how much I dug my uncle, how cool I thought he was. And in that circumstance, I don't want that to be the final memory, you know?
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. I mean, I'm a believer that we need rituals to help us process, but I'm curious about how those rituals can be updated and transformed. I have planned a good amount of funerals now. I am almost a professional eulogizer at this point. I've done it so much. I've easily done like half a dozen eulogies at this point. I know it's dumb. It's dumb. And I've been to like, I don't know, 20 funerals, maybe more. Um, you know, all ages.
Mm.
Yeah. So, when you've experienced a lot of loss and you've experienced a lot of the same funerals, which, the funeral industry and the wedding industry are similar industries. And also, have you noticed that it's the same song? It's my favorite little. It's like the same kind of dirge,
One
stuff.
part of you is dying and the other.
Just saying. I'm just saying. I always say it's like, if you're monogamous, it's like the end of your sex life. It's like a little sad. But the concept of the rituals being that they have to look a certain kind of way, and that I am curious about how the rituals can be, something I say in the talk also is there's so many different ways to grieve, and more I feel like the putting a person in a box and saying that on this Tuesday, a week after they died, we are going to gather in black and do this thing, and then we're never going to talk about them again, which is an experience that I have had a couple of times now, where I'm like, are we ever going to talk about this person again? Like, are we ever going to, And so I have an altar, and all of my relatives are up there, and some of my friends and some of their people. I have little cards for them also, and I believe in ancestor worship. I believe in creating community around it. I believe in keeping their memory alive because they are present, right? They are a presence. If energy can't be created, and we don't have to get woo about it. If energy can't be created or destroyed, then your uncle, who is a full-grown human and influenced you, still has a presence in the world. And honoring that presence, I think Coco does a really good job of telling us and giving us a window into Mexico and Dia de los Muertos. And it's such a beautiful thing where they cross over, and but in order to be recognized, their relatives have to continue feeding them, right? They have to continue to have their photo on their altar. And if their photo isn't on their altar, then they don't exist. And that to me is such a doing the talk really helped me conceptualize what I was feeling, which was like, I don't matter anymore. Okay. You're not going to get me caught up. Okay. We're going to keep it together. There's a world in which life is really, in America at least, is orchestrated around nuclear family.
Yeah.
Right. And as someone who is not married, not, childless, and without parents, it's really like I don't exist. I don't matter. Where do I matter? Whose house do I go to on Christmas? Who's celebrating my birthday? And when my parents died, I was like, man, I have been living according to these rules for so long that and holding space for the elderly and for my people, for my folks.
Yes.
And it was a lot of sacrifice, and it was a lot of giving. And so now, both orchestrating my life towards service and towards, being an auntie and towards being these things. But also that keeping their memory alive and doing the talk meant that I had a kind of lightness because I brought them into the room with me, and your lives mattered and our lives mattered together. And part of why I went through all of this, I believe, is because I am a storyteller, right? And because I can make even the hardest thing that happened to me into a story that other people can consume, because maybe you won't go through what I went through, but you will go through loss. That is the one common denominator. That is the one thing that I know. Everyone's going to experience loss in some way. It's not even just loss of people, right? Loss of the idea of the person that you thought you were going to be. 20 years ago, I was convinced I was already going to be super famous and, have a kid and I don't know, be like, have like a ranch and 2.5 cats, whatever. And
Specific number.
I got the cat, so.
No, I'll say like in listening to it, and we got connected through DJ,
Yeah.
and Baldwin and Co. And then, chatting with you and then checking out the TED Talk. It's just like, it got me in that way. It got me right in the feels. And, having sort of a similar thing, where it's just like, do I matter and what's there? And then my general inclination is I'd rather fight it. I'd rather fight that idea. I was like, I'm gonna just prove that I'm great. I'm kind of like, come and get these flies off me because I'm the shit. And it's that.
Hey, let's
It's
go.
that. But it's gassing it up. And in those moments where you may question like, all right, where do I go? What do I do in this instance, and so on. It's just like having that inventory, that group of people, and the thing that you touched on, like, a bit ago, where, as we age, who's the person, that's there? Is it I wanted to be robots, frankly,
Oh, well, I think you're in luck because I think that at least LA is teaching me that the robots are absolutely coming. They've already arrived. They're doing Uber Eats. There's already robot hotels.
The other thing that's interesting in doing this, right? I let these podcasts roll sometimes, so we have enough of my audio, so I will live on. It's just AI is working.
Oh man, he'd like embrace it. Okay, stop fighting it. Stop fighting. Don't fight. Don't fight.
I ran this bit. I was just like, look, man, I know the Japanese. I've been studying Japanese for like 250 days at this point. I'm diving deeper.
What can you say in Japanese?
I guess I could say a few things. I've been looking at the dirtier ones.
I wasn't. Wow. Blushed. I think I'm blushed.
What's the thing? Shirohiro. It's like what is it? Shirohito. It's just white person.
Oh, wow. That's helpful. It's useful. That's mm-hmm.
And Watashino, just like it's always the word I is Watashino is wild. That's a long word for one letter.
It's true. That's true. But it's also like, it means that to me, in the worldview of the language, to get like nerdy, it means that I has more space in.
So you get it. It. But so in it, diving into the culture a little bit and learning about the amount of sort of, cremation and all of that stuff. I'm like, well, all right. And sort of like how that's looked at and, just thinking past and sort of beyond what I think we've gotten as far as what that whole arc and that whole process looks like towards the end, researching that and even going back into like metaphysics and all of that stuff, it gives me some sense that this idea isn't the only idea, and that gives me solace. Instead of like, oh, you just process it in this way. one day you'll be in a box, bing, bang, boom, and we're out. And it's like, I think it's something more than that. And your point a moment ago about, you know, are we talking about this person again? And, I've seen that and I've called that out in my own circles. And I like these instances where we're able to, find a way to celebrate the person after they're gone, whether it be, hey, we do this thing on their birthday, or, I don't do the tattoo thing. I got enough tattoos at this point, but
How many tattoos you got?
I only got 3 of them, but I want to get a few more, but I don't do the tribute tattoo. It's just, all right.
I think I might do a tribute tattoo. I want to do, I need someone to design it. But I want to do the women in my family. And then maybe eventually I'll do the men, but, just, remembering the mothers and remembering maybe I'll do that for Mother's Day this year.
That could be interesting.
Yeah. Just, I feel like the women in my family were very ballsy. And they were trying to buck tradition in times where, they didn't have a lot of resources to figure out how to do that. But they really were like, what do you mean men run things? Like, we run things. Like, I never really got that concept growing up. So one of my first boyfriends was like, you're not domestic enough. And I was like, well, that wasn't modeled in my home. Like, domesticity was something that was shared. And that was that. What do you mean? I'm supposed to like cook and feed you and work? Like all of those things are
You probably noticed my face betrayed whatever was coming. I was like,
yeah,
it
no,
always does it.
the real thing. Adult males still looking for some of them,
Yeah.
and I love men. I am not I am an equal opportunity lover. But I think that, a lot of cultural conditioning has built in, these are traditional roles. And my question is, who are they serving anymore? If men and women are both in the household, then, and also in the workforce, then we have to update them. That's all.
Yeah. You talk about division of labor and all of that different stuff. It's just like, you do this stuff, I do that stuff. We can flip whatever it is.
Whatever you're good at. Cause there's
collaboration.
What are you good at? Right. Like, let's not say who your mom was good at, your grandma, your uncle, like what you good at, what you like to do. Like, do you want to do household labor? Like, have to fix stuff? Is that what you want to do? Cause I know
I'm good at everything, right? So the thing about it, no. But I will say this, and I'm going to move into this last question. I will say this, like, as a person I was dating years ago, she was very into the reality TV.
Oh,
yeah. So when you buy my dream house and, you'll have your man cave, I was like, hold on, run that back.
like, what? Man cave?
Like, man cave? I was like, am I a bear? What are you saying to me?
I didn't ask for that. Like, what?
My eye roll was so, I was like, yo, I am in the kitchen because I'm a better cook than you. Let's talk about it.
Sit down, okay? You should get a drill and learn how to put stuff up. Some of my friends, my girlfriends, are really good with a drill and are very good at building things. So, we're just finally in a place where, what are your actual strengths? What are your interests? Mm-hmm. And how can we contribute to each other? And I think that is also the radical vision that I have for family and for life is, what does it mean to be pouring into, right? To be pouring into a situation, to saying, yes, we did lose a family member, but like, we're all going to show up together and do, and I just think it brings up a lot of stuff, right? If you were struggling before your family member passed away, then you're probably going to have a tough time when they go, right? Yeah. So, it's really death to me is such a wonderful magnifier for how we're living. Like,
so that actually makes me think of this question in terms of sort of not subsequent work, but this has been like an arc of time that loss has been and grief has been a big factor, right? How has that shown up in your work, in the writing, and your sort of perspectives of maybe incorporating sort of humor in these moments that are like, yo, this is rough, but so we're going to have this in there to kind of,
Yes.
kind of like add a little bit of, what is it, juice with the medicine?
Yes, yes, yes. So my work primarily has had some kind of loss in it in the last, I would say, 8, 10 years. And it's been, without like being annoying about it, it's kind of my thing. Like I really am interested in grief and moments of transition and how they change everything. So the play that I wrote, that was in graduate school. I wrote 2 plays in graduate school that are the plays that I use the most, and I use meaning like I share them with people. People read them. Is and I've had readings of and gotten fellowships, etc. from. Is a play called A Dead Black Man, and it actually does have comedic elements in it. It is about a black male narrator who is dead, and it came out pre George Floyd. I wrote it in 2018 and 2019, and I've developed it over the last several years. But it's all about the projections that we have onto the black male body, and the narrator could be anybody, right? He can be any black male. And in a lot of ways, it was my question about how did we get here, not just from white supremacy, but how we internalize our own biases and our own hatred. And what's the medicine to counteract that? What does it look like to let you, Rob, be an individual that for argument's sake, wants to wear a crown of flowers and like sit in the sun, and maybe isn't counting statistics on a basketball game, or whatever the things you want to say, right? And not negating any of those things, but saying the boxes that we put each other in, any boxes, but specifically black men, can be really damaging. And those are the boxes that dehumanize all of us and allow us to be a statistic. So it's newspaper headlines that I create into vignettes. So that, and then the play that I did for my showcase for Brooklyn College, which was at the Public. We had a workshop at the Public Theater in 2019, and it's a queer women who are in a love story. It's 20 years of their love, and one of them dies in childbirth. So we're dealing with women mortality and women of color and how they're disproportionately dying, but also the projections that her lover has on her after she passes, like the ways in which she puts her in a specific kind of box of like, my love, and then questioning, well, is that who she was? Right. And is that who we were? And did I get it right? Is the memory that I have of her even accurate? And so she's opening up a wedding album, a photo album, and going through the photos, and we're seeing the photos come to life. So that's called A and B. So those are, 2 pieces of work that I that are dear to my heart, that feel like love letters to my ancestors and to my loved ones. And I continue to work on them. I did a workshop in 22 where I performed in A and B. And that's, what I'd like to do at some point, is to make that into a film or into a play where I get to play the lead role. So
if you need like some sort of bellhop type, or just some background player, just a giant background player that is
you gonna walk on, you try to get yours. You know what? You got a whole walk-on role. You got this. I got you.
Because here's the thing. I always hear all actors are shorter than me at 6'4", just walking by. Hey, how's it going?
You would be a security guard, I think. Yes. Are you good with that? Can you just check somebody? Like, I need you to just check ID. You got this?
I'm good with it. I've been cast briefly. I was cast as a drug dealer. My scene was cut from We Own the City, but I was cast as a drug dealer. And it might have been art reflected life at one point, who knows? But it was great. And I was like, oh, drug dealers wouldn't wear that? You don't say.
Wow. It's set in a bar, so I will need I will need a bouncer. But the bouncer that I had at that bar, because it was based on a real bar that I worked in the Lower East Side, and those bouncers were actually bananas crazy. So I actually can't wait to read, because I remember one time, I don't know if Homeboy was on something or what, but he got in my face and was like, "Y'all women these days," and I was like, first of all, don't start with y'all women these days. He said, "Y'all women these days, you just gold diggers. You looking for money." I was like, sir, I'm working in this bar right now. Ain't nobody pick me up afterwards. I do not like, I don't know about y'all women, but I am not one of them.
120%. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to move into this last question, and this is more of a this is a this is a thing I like to get a sense on from people of, like, when you get lost, like, through, I think a lot of times when we have these processes, we work and we know the process really well, or we think we know the process, whether it comes to writing, whether it comes to preparing for work or what have you, right? And life is uncertainty.
Yes.
When we're in doubt, especially when it comes to the creative process, how do you get back to your sort of factory settings and, like, all right, what's true? How do you get back to it?
Ooh, I literally just had a conversation with Carolyn Michelle Smith about this yesterday, about life in uncertain times, because, we're in like a really tough space within the industry. And my first thing that I'll say is I don't have like that answer, right? I'm still currently figuring it out. Today's answer is I went and got a massage, because I really believe in, to reference the TED again, just to, is the somatics of it all. It's like a lot of stuff that we as creatives, we use our bodies, we use our like physical instrument in ways where it can need a tune-up, so be it, exercise, be it physical body work, be it dance or movement. Those are things that really nourish me, and that they're things that I can go back to when I'm, to get to your factory setting thing. I'm doing the artist's way right now again. And I think it's a really good system, because you can just follow it and it goes to the end that it goes, but it requires certain things like going on an artist date and, looking at other artists' work and pulling from them. So much of art is borrowing, so much of it is seeing Jordan Peele and saying, wow, that scene in Nope is dope. Nope is dope, by the way. There were camps. I had a book club with my friend Chris Allen, and it was like, Nope was dope or Nope was Nope. And I was in the Nope dope camp. Were you Nope or dope?
Dope.
Dope. Right, exactly. Nope was dope. Period end. So, that opening scene where this giant sky, right? And when in history have like Black filmmakers made work that was that expansive and wild, right? And you can take that wherever you want to go. You can take that in a scene around grief. You could take that as in a scene around birth, around a new beginning. It's got a Thelma and Louise vibe. We need a Black themed Thelma and Louise, like, kind of thing, trademarked. So that's, I think, another thing is just pulling from other art and really not forcing myself to create if I don't have it, but saying, where can I pull from? What's available to me? You know, I go back to my favorite shows. I read plays, I go see plays. You know, being in New York is amazing because there's just so much to see. You couldn't see it if you tried. But, you know, there's an incredible play I think I told you about before called Sinking Ink with my dear friend Sangoji Kam and all of my friends in it. And it's the Apollo. It just got started in previews May 7th. So, you know, there's so much art to see. You know, Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats have a art exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum that I want to go to. And, you know, when I was in LA, I was, you know, going to art exhibits out there and really just imbibing the nature in Los Angeles, right? There's like hummingbirds in my backyard and really being like, how can I be present with the earth, you know, because earth is constantly like artists sometimes need motivation to do their art, but I noticed that in the natural world, they're just doing art every day. Bees are humming and making their thing. And that's a creative act, right? They make a thing happen every day. They pollinate every day for however long they're alive. So, you know, I think that the artists, how do we pull from the natural processes as well?
That's a great response, and I think one of the takeaways for folks to utilize, bees are makers. Never forget that.
We making stuff and bless the bees. Can we protect the bees? Like we need them so much. My God, it's a moment. It's a moment in history. Man, oh man. Wait, these rapid fire questions. Did we do them already? No.
Oh, they're right here. We're
okay.
here.
Okay. Oh gosh, I'm excited.
All right.
Wow.
So here's the rapid fire portion. As I tell everyone, you don't want to overthink these. You know, whatever pops in your head. It's kind of like that saying. It's like, look, I said what I said. That's what it is.
Okay.
All right. So here's the first one. Your go-to tactic for overcoming stage fright or nerves. Now swing it.
Okay. First one is actually physical movement. I try to shake it out. So I loosen up my jaw. Mm-hmm. And pressure points here, pressure points in your toes, and grounding. So I like to have my feet on the floor without socks or shoes, and imagine that there's like roots growing through my feet, because ultimately your feet on the ground, as long as you know your feet are on the ground, it's kind of hard to be as nervous, right? Like, you know, that's a technique that you can also use for panic attacks, is like changing the temperature. So like if you're hot, getting cold, etc. And then just being like, I'm here, I'm present. And even the thing that's scaring me isn't true. What's true is that I'm here.
That's good. So, I'm going to utilize that. I have done the temperature thing. I do the identifying what's around the room thing. And I find once I'm in it, once I can get through the starting part of it, then it's just my natural Robisms comes out. And I got a piece of advice when I did my creative mornings talk, not a TED talk, but creative mornings talk and I got a piece of advice from D. Watkins, and he was just like, yo, start off with something you normally wouldn't do. And I was like, go on. And he was like, I start off with a joke. And I was like, I try that. And I was like, I get the people on my side. And then, so in that video, I come out there with a prop. I'm not Gallagher, I'm not Carrot Top, but I have a prop. And then I did the self-deprecating thing. People were on my side and I was able to just flow.
That's it. That was in TED Lab. He says that to her, to Rebecca, when she's like, she's like, I don't know what to do. I can't say that. And he's like, what if you make fun of yourself? People like that. So yeah, it's good.
So here's the next one. So obviously, you know, humor, comedy, I think that's a language we're both speaking in. What, when you're writing, when you're anything around the creative side of things, right? What are the laughs you're looking for? And I know that might sound weird, but what are the laughs that you're looking for?
I'm always looking for the laugh. My favorite thing in an audience when I do something is to watch people in the audience react and see where they laugh and note that. Yeah. I'm often looking for the laugh that comes out of surprise or the laugh that rolls into a cry. Like I really want to see people laugh and then think, or laugh and then catch themselves. A laugh that comes out of discomfort, or having like that, like, oh, am I supposed to be laughing right now?
Yeah.
Or the laugh that's like, oh, and then she hit me with something. There's like a kind of roller coaster ride that I like to see happen, and I'm doing that intentionally, and I like to see if it works.
I like to laugh when someone's like, "Are you dumb?" I like that where they have to comment on it, or the one that's like, "Yo, you're silly." Like they get it and it's delayed. It's like,
They're like, where'd that come from? How
like you
we?
you so stupid.
Yeah, definitely.
So I got two more in these rapid fire questions. This now they get a little weirder. Favorite destination? You're a traveler, so what's the favorite destination you've had? Like, let's say in the last year, because you've traveled a lot. So, favorite
Yes.
destination you've visited in the last year?
Yeah, last year. I would say that my favorite destination was my trip to Europe. Specifically, I went to Greece. I went to an island in Greece called Kefalonia, and it's just it's everything you imagine Greece to be. It was for my very good friend's 40th birthday, and I made friends with these older women after she and her other friends went back. I traveled in Greece for a little bit by myself, and women were in their 50s and 60s, and had already had their kids, and they were living that sort of second stage of life that we kind of condemn women to, and they were loving it. They were having a blast. They were grandmothers and they were travelers, and they just took me around the island and showed me Greece and showed me their version of Greece. So
That's dope. That's dope. All right, here's the last one. Because I've had some controversy around the thing that's on my mind. It's been some controversy around this particular item. You may not even pick this item when I ask this question, but if you do, we'll definitely go deeper into it. So, but I gotta ask, what is your favorite soul food side dish?
whoa, favorite
Yeah.
food side dish.
There's only really one answer, but I just want to hear what you're taking.
Not one answer. There are so many possible answers. That is not that there's so many dishes. What do you
I'm
say?
listening. I'm hearing you. But
Um
also,
man, oh man. Okay, so it's a tie for me
okay.
between because I have a dairy issue between mac and cheese and yams. So, or sweet potatoes, whatever. But I of course the number one is honestly mac and cheese. And then the second one would be sweet potatoes or yams. So
See, that's the thing, right? This is how I know we're friends because you answered it in the most right way and you made it even better because when the yams and the mac and cheese come together, right? Black they say. But the thing that got me, right? They talk about like there were some, people, some folks within the community, and I side eye them. They
Mhm.
kind of besmirch mac and cheese. They say, "Oh, man, it's just noodles and cheese. It's not even special." I'm like, "Yo,
Oh, hold up, hold the phone, calm down, pump the brakes. Even if I can't ever eat it again, it'll still be amazing.
yes, it's like, and the black dude made it. I think that's who's credited with the original joint. So it's like, yo, this is like ours. Like the High on a Hog documentary. They talk about this dude.
Yeah, no, that is amazing. A and B, it has such an interesting tradition because my grandmother had, of course, from my dad's side, has a version that, she wrote out for us. I've freaking lost the recipe like a jerk. I know, such a womp womp. I should have just taken a picture and put it in a file, because I remember she wrote it out for me, and she's like, keep this kind of thing, right? But in that, all of us have a version of it from family, and I think that that's what makes it so special. It's not just that we eat the food, but as we eat the food as an honoring to the lineage that created this food out of so little, right? they didn't have. And, now we can go to the corner store and we really don't understand the amazing shit that, like, I have a 24-hour store, or like a soul food store up the block that has a buffet where I can get it literally right now at 6:48. And like, they were like, that's the food for the week or what have you, or the month, So just honoring that the food that we are eating is paying homage to them.
Now you make me think about, I want to go back up there to New York and go to a bodega and like, yo, look, can I get like a bacon, egg, and cheese with mac and cheese on a cinnamon raisin bagel toasted?
That sounds freaking amazing. I got back here and I've been going crazy for cinnamon raisin bagels because you cannot get them in LA. And I've been like, I can't eat a bagel every day forever, but I go for the first week and I absolutely have had.
Yeah, we're on the same page. That is my favorite bagel. So shout out to you on that. And with that, that's kind of the podcast. We did it. So there are two things I want to do. There's two things I want to do in these final moments here. One, I want to thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and spending some time with me. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to share with the listeners social media, website, shameless plugs really is what we do at the end here.
Okay, I love it. Thank you so much for having me and for being so vulnerable and being open to this conversation. I think when people hear grief, they do kind of shut down. So opening up and my intention is just to bring people into the conversations, into the room. And I want to, as I often do, honor my ancestors and my parents for helping me with this story. My email and my website is TanyaEverett.com, TanyaEverett.com. And my socials are also Tanya.Everett. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. I know. Oh, I'm on the TikToks. I'm such an auntie about it. I'm like, the TikToks? What's happening right now? And yes, I'm very vocal on Instagram specifically. So, check out my lives and please stay in touch. I'd love to have your audience be my audience.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank the great Tanya Everett. And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank the great Tanya Everett for coming on to the podcast and spending some time with us. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.